Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
You have to run to stay in front. Welcome.
Unfiltered on Past the Wire TV. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered on Past the Wire TV. I'm here with my co-host, Michael Wilson. We're ready to talk some interesting horse racing again, unfiltered as usual. We hope you can handle it. Welcome back, Michael.
Yeah, no, it should be fun. I think we're going to hit on a lot of interesting topics that people might want to know about. So I think we covered Triple Crown. Now it's dying down a little bit so we can kind of get in the weeds on a couple other things.
Well, there's no Triple Crown. We know that. This is one of those years we may have a different horse win all three races, and you never know. You may have a horse take the Preakness and the Belmont. It's certainly not going to be Rich Spirit, who decided, after initially stating they were going to run in the Preakness, they decided to bypass it. And there was a little bit of an uproar on social media. I was surprised that some of the stands and lines in the sand that people drew about a reportedly sound Kentucky Derby winner opting to skip the Preakness. I've got thoughts on it, and I've got thoughts on a lot of the opinions out there. I know Nick Luck, the racing, I don't know, what is he, an analyst, commentator? I'm not even sure what he is.
Right.
Whatever he is, he was very vocal. I thought it was unheard of. What's your take as a former trainer on skipping the Preakness with a Derby winner, assuming he's sound and there's no problems? Which let's just get something out there right away. None of us really know that. A horse that wins the Derby can have an issue going on that the trainer doesn't want to tell the media or anybody else, when you got stud deals and everything else in play. So nobody really knows that except the trainer, and that's just how it is, I mean, you're not going to find that out if they don't want you to. But assuming sound and feeling great, what's your take?
I mean, obviously, there's two schools of that, right? The sportsman in me would say, hey, send him through the test of champions and see if he is one. Skipping the Preakness when you've won the Derby, usually, as we've seen, with Baffert horses and other horses in the past, you're coming down, you're cutting back in distance. You run a hard race in the Derby. You've had 2 weeks to recover, which I think is plenty of time. I know that there might be some arguments on that with different schools of thought nowadays of how horses are trained. But I think 2 weeks is plenty of time. So do you ride the wave and go on it? I probably would. At the same time, they were talking Belmont from the beginning. So to them, it might make more sense to win the Derby and win the Belmont and not have a, mark on the resume that we lost the Preakness. It might not be the horse's best distance. It might not be the best situation for him. And so they might just be saying, hey, look, let's just try and keep a winning streak going. But what are your thoughts, John?
If you know me, you would think my thought is going to be the opposite of what it is, because I'm a traditionalist. I love the history of the game. I love the Triple Crown. I love those three races and watching them. And I'm absolutely a sportsman. That said, I think it really comes down to the connections in the individual horse. I don't think there should be any unwritten obligation or urge to run in that race. Okay. And there could be 1,000,001 different reasons why you might not opt to run in it. Rich Strike, to me, doesn't look like a horse who would excel in that situation. Okay. And I like your analogy of possibly winning the Derby and the Belmont without having a blemish in between. And also a blemish that can take a little bit out of your horse and maybe compromise your chance to win the Belmont. That could happen. And, I go back years ago when I was young and going to the racetrack all the time, Spend a Buck won the Kentucky Derby, went wire to wire. And he opted to skip the Preakness and actually run somewhere else. I think he ran in the Jersey Derby to get like some $2 million bonus or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
He
yeah,
was eligible
yeah.
for, and everybody criticized him. And the trainer was like, "Listen, I'm running for the money. I, you know, I mean, we're going for the bonus, you know." And he just threw tradition and all of that out the window. And that's their prerogative. You know, you love to see it. You love to see a horse going for the Triple Crown. To me, I think it's really solely a trainer decision that shouldn't, and an owner that should not be influenced at all by tradition or even sportsmanship or anything else other than what you think is best for your horse and how you want to campaign your horse. You know, people opining on social media that it's this and it's that, and Nick Luck, where they couldn't believe it, unheard of. I think that's like borderline comical, ridiculous. You know what I mean? If you feel that way, go buy a horse, win the Derby, and run him into Preakness no matter how he's doing. You know, just it was ridiculous to me, the takes that it was like, so, oh, how could you not do it? You got to run. Yeah, no, you don't. You can run your horse wherever you want, whenever you want. And I would like to think that most people, and if you're fortunate enough to play the game on that level, that you do what you feel is best for your horse, and the horse's longevity and entire career. An entire career should not be based on one race. You know, 2 weeks is quick. I don't disagree with you that it's plenty of time for the horse to come back if it's the right horse. You know,
Right,
some
right.
horses need more than 2 weeks. Some horses, I've seen guys win grade ones off 3 days rest. I was there when Conquista do Cielo won the Met Mile on a Monday, and that Saturday ran into Belmont, and they were two of the most impressive grade one wins you'll ever see. Anybody
Yeah.
will ever see. So it all depends on the horse. You know, Woody Stevens would not have done that with every horse in his barn. You know, he did it with that horse because he knew he could do it and win it, and the horse could handle it. And I respect that kind of horsemanship and sportsmanship over, well, it's the Preakness, we won the Derby, we got to run. If you were training for me and we won the Kentucky Derby, I would not feel it's an automatic to go into Preakness. I would say to you the next day or the day later, are we going to Pimlico? Are we going to the Belmont? Are we resting him? You know, what's he telling you to do? You know, what do you think? And whatever you told me, I would be okay with. You know, I wouldn't say, oh, come on, can't we run into Preakness, or we got to take a shot at it, or the Triple Crown? I mean, yeah, I'd love to win the Triple Crown. If you told me, John, we got a shot to win in 2 weeks, and I think the horse can handle it, you know, coming back, then yeah, I'm all in. But if you don't tell me that, I'm not going to say, listen, can we take a shot? No, that's just me.
No, and I hear you. I mean, we've seen it recently, and I think people might forget this. We saw it with a Triple Crown winner who was pushed to run too quick too soon, and I believe he's actually beat by the sire of Rich Strike, you know, which
American
was
Pharoah.
American Pharaoh. And
Right.
Baffert didn't want to run him and turn
in
him.
the Travers. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want to wheel him back in the Travers. He wanted to do the Haskell and give the horse time. They wheeled him back, and the horse came up a little short. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could look at it this way. This horse has a pedigree that is very difficult to get a stallion deal done. So, at least at a significant value. So, the more races that he can put on his resume as wins, both now at the Kentucky Derby, and if he could win the Belmont, and if he can go on in the summer and win a couple of those races, it increases his value. If he was to go to the Preakness, exhaust himself, maybe get beat by horses who are better suited for that distance and that surface and the environment of the Preakness, and then come in short for the Belmont and lose that, well, now you're talking a couple $1 million swing in terms of what you're looking at as a stallion. So
I'm glad you brought that up, okay, because it brings up a very interesting point, okay, and this goes more towards the business side of the game, and you got to realize with this kind of money at stake, as much as we love to see horses race, okay, and we love the competitiveness and the sportsman side of it, okay, if I own Rich Strike, all right, and I know I can get a deal now where we can get him to stud the first year, maybe 7,500, 10,000, 15,000. I don't know. I'm not in tune enough with that to really know. But it sounds like to me, like if he went to retire today, he would stand for somewhere between 7,500 to 15,000.
Probably 25.
That
Probably
much?
25.
Okay.
Off the Derby, probably 25.
Then that makes it even a more interesting discussion of what I'm going to ask you. Okay. I would be concerned if I owned that horse. I said, this horse may never win another grade 1. He may not win another grade 2. We may have had our dance in the sun because we caught a perfect storm in the Derby with a lot of speed, and we got lucky, and we may not catch that again, and we just may start getting drubbed, and we just can't compete with these grade 1 horses. How are we going to compete with Jack Christopher and Zandon and Epicenter and all the other horses going forward? Do I run my horse 3, 4, 5, 6 more times this year, get destroyed? Does that bring down the value if I said, you know what? He's not feeling so good. We're going to retire him. We won the Derby, rah, 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 and put him on the side now at 25,000. Can I devalue him?
Absolutely. I mean, and
that's a tough call to me.
And some people might argue with me and say, 25,000 is far too low for a horse that won the Kentucky Derby. And the reason why I say 25,000 is he's by keen ice. Okay. And at the same time, he's out of a mare that, was given away. It sounds like the story came out was given away before the Kentucky Derby. So you don't have a lot of page on your side. And if you look at another horse who recently retired, who has a much better resume, Nick's Go, he's standing for 30,000 because again, he falls into an interesting situation being by, who's he by? He's by Painter out of an outflanker mare. I think he's by an outflanker mare. So when you have these obscure pedigrees, you cannot command, 50, 75,000 and expect to have a full book, because your goal when you're having a stallion is to set the fee at a price that people are willing to pay so the stallion has a shot to prove himself. So for me personally, I think you're a 25, 30 with a pedigree like that, that's where you have to be. So some people might say, no, Derby winners, 100,000. Yeah, if you're by Pioneer the Nile or you're by Constitution or you're by somebody else, sure. But this horse, that's what I would say is a sweet spot at this point in time. Now, if he goes out and gets handled the rest of the year, now he's a fluke. Right. And now you're looking at 10,000 or something in that range. And when you multiply 10,000 and you say you're going to breed 175 mares, 10,000 versus 25,000 is a massive difference in income. Exactly. So you've got to pick your spots. And maybe that's what they're doing, is saying, look, we've got to pick our spots, make sure we put our horse in the best spot at the best time, at the best distance, to where we can keep increasing his value.
Yeah, and if this is going to sound terrible, and I hate to say it, but business is business. But if I had a deal, if he was my horse and I had a deal to stand him for 100,000, and there was some farm out there that said, hey, listen, we're going to fill his book at 100,000. We are going to market him and fill his book at that. I wouldn't take a chance. I wouldn't run him. I'd say, you know what? Bring him on over. Let's go to stud, which is terrible, because it's one of my problems with the game, that they retire all these Derby winners too soon, and we don't see any of them run at 4. Very, very rare to see a Derby winner run as a 4-year-old. So I almost hate saying that, but business is business. It's tough to turn away that kind of money. And you don't see the commercials. The commercial value Derby winners stick around. They got to go,
Well, and it's a sad part of our sport. I think it's something that might need to be looked into more as we go forward, in terms of making sure you have stallion deals that compensate owners, that allow them to keep these horses on the racetrack. And a lot of them do, but then you run the risk of, and a horse can get injured anywhere, right? And a lot of it comes down to that of, why risk this horse when we could because American Pharoah had a stallion deal, which is why he ran in the Traverse, was there were kickers for every race that he won. There was another kicker in the deal. So as you get into those things, some of these horses like Hot Rod Charlie is sticking around. as you build out better stallion deals that help these horses stick around and compete, the sport gets better. But at this point in time, a lot of the money on the table for some of these younger horses with massive pedigrees, because it's twofold. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand the business side of the business. So it's not just what that horse is worth. It's not what he can command as a stallion, but the farm wants him there because it's a name that draws people to the farm where they can then promote and market all the other stallions on the roster. So if you come out to see the Kentucky Derby winner and all of a sudden I walk, let's just pull a name out of a hat and let's just say we're going to Spendthrift, right? I mean, you've got Into Mischief and you've got a lot of great stallions at that farm, but let's say there might be one that just kind of walks out of the stall and you're like, you know what? I forgot that Omaha Beach was here. And actually, I've got a couple mares to send to Omaha Beach. So when you have a stallion that drives attention towards your farm, you want them there as quick as possible because it helps also, though people might not realize this, fill up the books of the other stallions.
I believe that. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Interesting, the business side of it. It's just it's really a whole nother dynamic to it.
yeah, I mean, look, maybe we need to get Nike to make some horse racing shoes so that these horses are worth much more on the racetrack than they are retired. I mean,
that would be nice.
if you
nice.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, it's just the economics of the game at this point in time. And things might change down the road to where we see horses hang around longer. I mean, a lot of these horses you talked about, John, it was different. There was not as much money behind the stallion side. Right.
Absolutely.
They were family deals where, it's a Claiborne stallion. He's going to go stand at Claiborne anyways. They own it. They're not selling him for a profit.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Those were the horses that no amount of money can buy, that they just weren't for sale,
Yeah.
It was just a completely different game.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess as we're talking this, I think a question that you had mentioned to me was, what do you think about the spacing of these races? I know Wayne Lucas mentioned it years ago that no horse would win the Triple Crown with how the races are spaced. And then Baffert proved him wrong. But I mean, I guess that is the question.
That California Chrome guy, he went on national TV and said nobody's ever going to win the Triple Crown, and he propelled it right into prominence.
Yeah,
I think it's nonsense. Now this is the traditionalist. I don't think they're supposed to or should change the sequence or the timing of those races at all. Okay, right. I think just say no, take it off the table, and I'll tell you why. The Triple Crown is probably one of the most difficult things to achieve in sports. Okay.
Right.
That's why it's coveted. That's why it's so special. Okay. We know horses have done it and have had wonderful careers after, so it can be done. Okay. In the old days when horses were different, I mean, look at a horse like Citation. Citation ran in between the Preakness and the Belmont.
Yeah.
If I told you I had a horse that won the Preakness and was going for the Triple Crown after winning the Derby, and I want to run him in a spot before the Belmont, you'd probably try and have me Baker acted or committed or something nowadays.
Yeah.
Back then it wasn't so unheard of. Citation's not the only horse who did that, but he comes to mind. But let me just tell you something that you get from being older, like I do. Okay. Back when I was young and going to the racetrack, nobody had won the Triple Crown for like 25 years, and everybody was like dying for a Triple Crown winner. Okay. And Riva Ridge would have won the Triple Crown if it didn't rain in the Preakness when he lost to BBB. Make no mistake about it. That was 71, the year before Secretariat. He could handle that horse that beat him on a fast dry track if you gave that horse a 3/16 of a mile head start in a mile and 3/16 race. He just couldn't run in a slop, and it poured that day, and that was that. There was no Triple Crown. But Riva Ridge was a pretty serious racehorse, not as good as Secretariat, but he was much better than the horse that beat him that day. Now, Secretariat comes along and wins it, and it was celebrated like American Pharaoh. Okay, finally, after all these years, we got another one, blah, blah. And then we had two more. We had Seattle Slew and Affirmed. Okay. Yeah. And you want to know what everybody was saying around the racetrack? And, we didn't have social media back then, but the chatter around the racetrack and the articles were saying, you know what? We got to make this a little tougher. It's too easy. Too many horses are doing it now. These horses are better than those horses back then. You know what I mean? Now look at this. They're all 7. They're all doing it. You know, we got to make it harder. People are fickle. What have you done for me lately? It's a historic thing. Leave it alone. It goes in cycles. It goes in spurts. Okay. When American Pharaoh did it, my friend Joey, who I used to go to the track with back then, that remembers all these things I'm telling you, we're still friends to this day. Okay. He's like, remember when they were saying that? I'm like, of course I remember, because you watch. Now that American Pharaoh did it, be another couple of years, somebody else is going to do it, and somebody else. And sure enough, bang, Justify came along. And what did he do? He didn't only do it, he did it and took down that whole Apollo nonsense thing right along with it. Okay. You'll probably have another horse do it in the next year or 2 or 3. I'll tell you something else. I firmly believe that I'll have another would have done it. Okay. He won the Derby. He won the Preakness. He was scheduled to start in the Belmont. I don't know if he got hurt or what the real story was, but he didn't run. But when you look at that Belmont, that I think, what's his name? Union Rags won, coming up the rail to beat Painter. You look at the time of that race and you look at, I'll have another. If you're a real savvy student of the game and handicapper, it's hard to not envision I'll have another if he got the 1.5 miles winning that race and coming home faster than those 2 horses did. I believe he would have won the Triple Crown. So you might have had 3 had he run. He didn't run, so we'll never know. It's a moot point. But you had 2. It can be done. It's supposed to be hard. It doesn't ruin the horses. Like you said, 2 weeks is enough. 3. Can every horse do it? No. You got to have the right horse. You got to have the right trainer. You got to have the right trainer who knows how to bring a horse from that race to that race to that race, you know, point A to point B to point C. Everybody can't do it. Every horse can't do it, which is why it is so coveted and so difficult. It's a great part of the tradition of the Sport of Kings. I don't think it needs to be messed with at all. And I think if you do, you kind of change 100 years or whatever, how many years of history, you know what I mean?
I agree.
Now we got a horse that did it because we spaced the races out a month. So we got to give these ones an asterisk, you know what I mean? And I'll tell you something else. I don't know that we'd see, and you'd have to wait 100 years to see if I'm right, or 150 years to see if I'm right. But I don't know that if you changed it to 30 days apart for each race or 6 weeks for whatever you did, but if you spaced them out more, I don't know that in 150 years, you'd see more Triple Crown winners than you would if you left it alone. You may see the same
Agreed.
thing, you know?
You know, I think people might miss this because they might not focus on it as much as everybody talks about horses getting hurt in races. Okay. In races, most horses get hurt in training. Okay. If you watch, you will rarely see, sometimes you'll see horses come out of races and something's not quite right. But a lot of times, if you add time in between races, you now have to train on that horse in between those starts, right? So you ran a hard race, the horse came out, and now instead of giving him time to recover to run again, you now have to train him in between because you have to keep him fit so he doesn't lose fitness in that month for the next start and going the route. And so if there's anything, right? So if you do a hard effort, I take you for a long run. And I say, John, okay, you ran a marathon and we're going to run another marathon in a month. If you don't continuously train for that marathon for that month, you will not make it to the next marathon. But if I said, John, in 2 weeks, you're going to run another marathon, literally all we're doing is backing off, recovery, making sure you're hydrated, making sure your muscles recovered, doing some light exercise and running you again. So I actually do think that the Triple Crown, yes, you need to be a very special horse. And it's not so much the grueling nature of the Triple Crown that knocks out these horses. It is the money that comes with being one of those Triple Crown contenders. And I think a lot of it comes down to, and you talked about horses running in between the Preakness and the Belmont, right? So if you look at it from that aspect, if you look at those horses, and I've worked for 3, eventually 4 Hall of Fame trainers, okay? And I've talked to these guys about what it was like early on when they trained horses. And I've talked to all types of old school trainers. Those horses were trained hard. They weren't necessarily made different. They were trained harder. And so with that, they were fitter. And so they bounced out of races easier. Nowadays, we have this idea, because when I trained my horses pretty hard too. Some people thought I was nuts, but I'd learned that if you trained them hard, they got used to it and they were able to handle stuff better and they came out of races quicker. You had to balance it because you didn't want to ever overtrain. There's overtraining, which some people don't know that fine line, and they're still pushing an athlete. So I think that because we have this protective mentality nowadays of let's keep them fit, let's keep them fresh, let's try and make them last, that we're actually not having them fit enough to complete big campaigns like they used to.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think we're on the same page. I mean, it's a topic that gets talked about just about every year, you know. I really hope they just leave it alone, and they probably will, because racing is so dysfunctional. We can't stagger the post times of the stake races on a Saturday afternoon. How are we ever going to get 3 tracks to agree on how far apart they want those races to be?
Well, exactly. Let's look at the COVID year, right? The Derby was the last race, wasn't it? We ran everything else first.
Yeah. You know, I don't think they'll ever be able to agree on that. It's like, let's say we finally got what we know we need. They're going to appoint a racing commissioner, and how are they ever going to agree on who the commissioner is going to be? Yeah. No, I don't want him. No, I don't want her. No, I don't want that. No, I don't want this. We can't, we have a hard time getting things done. Face it. I mean, horse racing has a hard time getting anything done, even low-hanging fruit we can't tackle. You know what I mean? Yeah. We can't stop the odds dropping after the horses leave the gate, you know? So how are we ever going to do that? Why don't we take a little commercial break and we will come back and talk some jockey talk. How's that?
Sounds great.
We're going to talk a little jockeys, then we're going to talk a little bit about something special that's happening this year in the Preakness. We'll get to that in a minute, but I wanted to talk a little bit about jockeys and guys that are hot, okay? And
right.
And, you know, Flavien Prat right now is the hot hand. No question about it. Everybody wants him. I think I joked before we started the show that if my number was unlisted, I'd still be getting calls if I was his agent, you know? And I believe that, you know, he's an easy sell right now. You know, you probably don't even have to go out in the morning or anything. You know, you could probably just, you know, go on autopilot and book that guy's mounts right now. Everybody wants him, and everybody on social media is, so not everybody, but a lot of people saying, oh, he's so much better than everybody else. And I think people lose sight of something that's important. And I'm so curious of your take as a trainer, okay? And I'm different than a lot of people, okay? I know Alan Jerkins used to say you can put anybody on a horse. If he's the best horse, he's going to win. I was never of that school. I always felt that riders make a significant difference. And when I make seriously big bets on horses, which we know I have been known to do on occasion, I will only bet certain riders. Okay. If a rider that I am not comfortable with is riding a horse I really like, I will not go all in on certain riders. I just will not do it. And some I will bet with, confidence. Pratt is no question one of those guys that I can bet with the utmost confidence. But I think when you get to a certain level, okay, I would say there's maybe a dozen guys, maybe, and I don't mean guys and girls, 15 riders, okay, maybe 20 worldwide, okay, not just in the US. If you want to go US, I would take that number down, okay? But I would say there's maybe 20 riders worldwide that when you get to a certain level, there's a minimal amount of difference between how much they affect the outcome of a race, okay? And I think that when a guy gets hot or a girl gets really hot and they're getting all the choice mounts, okay? And they've got a good agent that knows how to differentiate from those mounts, okay? Because you can get a guy that doesn't know what he's doing booking mounts for Pratt, and he'll start winning less races because he won't be putting them on the best horses, okay?
Right.
You've got to know what horses are going where and avoid conflicts. And, there's a lot going into managing the book of a rider at that level, okay? It's just as hard to stay on the top as a jockey agent with a rider as it is to get there, okay? You've got to really manage that rider properly. But I think that, when you're in that groove and getting those mounts, it's easier to look good. You're making all the right moves. It's like a guy that's on a hitting streak. He's hitting pitches that he would swing and miss at when he's in a slump. The holes are opening for you. It's all clicking. It's all working out. Sports, like I said, the triple game is a streaky, hot and cold game. When you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. Betting is the same way. There is sometimes you're on a roll when you're betting. You can't make a wrong move. You eliminate a horse from a pick four, they don't win. When you're in a slump, you eliminate a horse, he's the one that beats you. It's one of those idiosyncrasies of sports, gambling, so many things. And I think that Pratt's in the groove and in the zone and looking really good. If a month from now or 2 months from now it becomes Irad Ortiz or somebody else, they'll be saying the same thing about him. Oh, look how much better than everybody else Irad is. They're all really good at that level, the best, it's hard to say this is a guy the best, you get those guys I put in that A column, and it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And when you're getting all those mounts, I remember when not too long ago, Ramon Dominguez, excellent rider, used to completely dominate Aqueduct in the winter, He was a good rider, one of the better riders there, no question about it. But every horse he was on was 3 to 5, 4 to 5. You're going to win a lot of races. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You're going to win a lot of races. When you win a lot of races, what happens? You're in the groove. Your timing is good. Everything is clicking. You're making all the right moves. If you go outside when you should have went inside, you win anyway because you're on the best horse. You know what I'm saying? It all clicks. When you're an avid race watcher and student of the game and you really dissect it, you see, this guy's just not getting the right mounts. And then what happens? Then you start pushing hard. You start
you get desperate.
Right. Yeah. You start doing things. So it's all relative. Pratt's a great rider. No question about it. As good as anybody in the country, but better? No, he's at that top level. And once you hit that top level, Luis Saez, all these guys that are getting there, you're there. And that's that. What's your take as a trainer? I'm talking and I want your opinion.
I mean, I think there's a group of guys that if I was a trainer at the draw and I got stuck, right? And I've had this happen. I had a filly win with Irad Ortiz, and we were going to go back in another race. And this was early in Irad's career. It was very early in New York at that time. And so his agent called and said, Mike, look, I can't take them out. And I'm like, whoa, we're about to draw. What do you mean you can't take them out? He said, well, we can't take them out, but we've got you Johnny V. I said, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Right. So So I think there's a certain amount of riders, and I would say Irad, Jose, Luis Saez, Joel Rosario, Johnny V, and Pratt right now. And there's others that I'm probably leaving out of this. But if you gave me an opportunity with those five, I'm not going to argue. Now, there are certain horses and certain riders. And so what I think there's two things, right? A lot of people forget that this is a sport. And in a sport, confidence matters. So when you are doing well, you have a lot of confidence. When you're on the right horses, you make the right decisions because your confidence is there. John, you said it. If you don't get the right mounts, now every time you get up, you've got to pull something, you got to knock the homer out of the park because you're not getting to the at bat that often, right? And you've got to try and make up for the horses that you're not getting. And so you do a little too much here, or you make a bad move there because you thought you could get through and you couldn't. And trainers do it too. I mean, I remember when things were clicking for me, and article after article was coming out. And I think I was winning at like 33% for a span. And nothing could go wrong. I mean, we just trained the horses, ran them, and they won. Then we got to Saratoga. And it was funny. I was the third leading trainer with horses in the money, with 0 wins, with all this press. And everybody says you can't train a horse. So yeah, we'd lose by a nose, half a head. I mean, we were 75% in the money with no wins. But when you get to that point, well, now your reputation, right, is going down. So you're trying to repair it. You're trying to run horses in spots that you probably shouldn't. You're trying to make decisions that you wouldn't in otherwise, because now the world's looking at you from a different angle. I think a lot of times, and Pratt's phenomenal, I think Johnny V doesn't get enough credit for who he is and what he does and what he still can do. And I put it down to this, and you see it with new trainers, and you see it with new jockeys, and you see it all the time. John, if I gave you $200,000 and said, go buy a car, are you going to go buy the 2020 Ferrari? Or are you going to go buy the 2022 Ferrari?
2022.
Yeah. So everybody wants new, right? It's new. They're good. And so then you throw the right horses at them, and now they're really good, and now they're the best ever. But it's a lot of it is, oh, he's new on the circuit. He won a couple races. Oh, that's exciting. We need to give him some horses. And you see it all the time. We'd have conversations with owners. As soon as a guy starts winning, everybody wants to give him horses. Well, now they got to keep winning. The guy who you moved the horse from, it wasn't that he might not have been any worse. Right. It might have been the right situation for your horse. Now goes the guy who's winning. Now you have to remember that guy's got so many horses, your horse might fall through the cracks. And so it's knowing. And, we're going to get into this when we start talking fillies, but each rider has, the guys that we mentioned are all great across the board, but each one of them is better than the other at specific things. And to me, one of the best riders of fillies in the country is Luis Saez. I think he has a way with fillies that most riders don't. And I know because I put him on a filly that nobody could ride, would want to ride, and she hated every single rider that I ever put on her, and I put Luis Saez on, she loved him to death. So as this is your job as a trainer and as an agent, and the agent needs to know too, and this is the other thing, the agent will know which horses fit his riders, not just the 3 to 5 shot. If it's a 3 to 5 shot that needs to go to the lead and you're not the best at judging pace, you're not going to take that mount. So a lot of it is understanding the mechanics that go into turning a jockey into a leading rider.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Saez is a phenomenal rider and probably one of the strongest finishers I've seen in a long time. I think he's as good a finisher as Joel Rosario, who is known as the quote Lafitte Pincay type strong finisher of today. I think Saez is every bit as strong as him. And let's talk a little bit about that. We got an exciting thing happening Saturday in Maryland.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a filly that you've been high on a long time, tried to buy in on early in her career, but we've got a filly running against the boys. Luis Saez is riding her, and you mentioned that you like how he rides fillies, but we've got Secret Oath going against the boys in the Preakness. Two things to talk about, really. One, in general, fillies against boys, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. And two, this particular filly going against these boys, and what are your thoughts on that? I've got feelings about it. In general, I used to be against fillies running against boys. I used to think, it's disadvantageous. It's not. But over the past, I would say maybe 6 or 7 years, I've softened my position on that, and I'm much more open and receptive to it. And a big part of that is because I've become so enthralled and interested in following European racing and racing in the UK, where it's done much, much more often. And I've listened to a lot of those trainers talk about it, like Aidan O'Brien and John Gosden and guys like that. And I've even spoken to them myself about it and gotten their takes on it. And I'm a lot more, I'm fine with it now. You know what I mean? And I understand that it's not really as big a difference. I always used to put it this way, and I don't mean to be politically incorrect or anything like that, but I would always ask people, if you're stuck at the top of a burning building and a fire person has to go up a ladder and throw you over the shoulder, choking and gagging from smoke inhalation, and then carry you down, do you want it to be some lady? Or do you want it to be a big, strong, muscle-bound, 6'4", 250-pound, solid rock ox of a man? I'll take the man. No offense to the women. I know they can do any job as good. I don't mean it that way. I'm just trying to. So I always thought in an athletic situation, boys have an advantage. A tough, bigger, stronger male has an advantage over a female. And if you look at, and I don't even know the person's name or know if it's a good analogy, but you'll be able to address it better in a moment. You've got that swimmer, okay,
Right.
that switched genders, okay? Used to be a guy, now he's a girl. All right, if she's a girl, whatever. I don't even know the right way to say it, and I mean no disrespect.
Right. The college
I don't
swimmer you're
follow
talking about. Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, but there's a swimmer that switched genders. Okay,
Right.
and supposedly as a male they weren't very good and didn't win a lot, and now as a female they're dominating or winning. And if I'm not getting that right, again, I apologize. I mean no disrespect to anybody. I don't follow it. I only hear peripherally about it. But like I said, I don't even know the person's name. I mean no disrespect by that, but it would lend credence to the argument that a male athlete has a little bit of an advantage over a female athlete. So is that true? Is it not? And I'm asking as a sincere question, not to, I don't want to get mad and say, oh, well, it's politically incorrect because but it's unfiltered. So I'm asking the question the way I see it. So
no, I completely understand the question. And I think human athletics are different than equine athletics. If we were to go into human athletics, and I say this all the time to people in racing, I said, look, in racing, we hope to breed faster horses, and we've been unsuccessful at that. If you go through, the horses are no faster now than they were, 100 years ago. Really, they're pretty much the same, especially at the 1.25 miles, 1 3/16 1.5 mile distance. There's not a huge difference. Nothing's really changed. In human athletics, we figure out how to train athletes better. We figure out how to make the gear better. We figure out how to get every ounce of potential out of a human athlete, okay? And in that, how you would figure out how to train a male athlete versus how you would figure out how to train a female athlete can change how things look. So when you look at, and they've talked about this in human athletics, when you look at explosive sports, men tend to do better in human athletics. When you start leveling it out in terms of endurance events, it actually gets closer together. Men are not as, it's not too dissimilar when you start seeing ultra running, or you see marathon running, or you see long distance racing and feats of endurance. Women start catching up to men, okay? And so you have to think of it this way. When you're a bigger, stronger, physical man, you are carrying that much more weight when you run, meaning you get tired more quickly. It is more exertion that you have. Fillies are a little bit lighter than Colts. Some people see that as a disadvantage. Other people see it as an advantage. And it's not just the weight allowance. And I love people when they talk about, oh, they're getting 8 pounds or they're getting this amount of weight. Look, it's a 1,000-pound horse running against a 1,200-pound horse. There's already a 200-pound difference. That what the riders on their back makes a minute difference. So when you're going route races, I think it really levels the playing field with fillies against the boys, because they're not carrying as much weight, first of all, as they run against the boys. Lots of them are just as fast and just as quick, and they train against boys in most mornings. So it's not like they never face colts. They gallop with each other, they breeze with each other. They just sometimes don't race with each other. And a lot of that comes down to, if I'm a horse owner, I want to pick the easiest race for my horse, right? So if I have an Amazon of a filly where I can just trounce fillies and pick up every single check that I can, I'd rather do that than to take a chance running against the boys and maybe wearing her out for a race, or maybe losing because a better horse goes in. If I know I've got the best female in a category, that's why we don't see it as much in the US. Difference in the US versus Europe. European horses tend to run on top of the turf, right? They run on top of the ground. So it equalizes how they perform against one another a little bit better. If you look at a European turf horse and then look at an American dirt horse, physique and conformation are very different. Our horses are very well muscled and they're big, bulky horses. When you run on dirt, you run through the dirt. You're not running on top of it. You're not just skipping across it. It takes a lot of effort. Again, so in certain situations, fillies, if they're lighter, it's easier for them to get through the dirt, right? Think of you running on beach sand against a woman. If you're heavier, John, it's going to be tougher for you to run through loose sand. So sometimes women skip across it a bit quicker. So going to that, I've never thought it's a disadvantage running fillies against boys. I did it several times in my career. But I also knew, okay, this filly's probably a maiden 50 filly against fillies. To run against the boys, I got to put her in for maiden 35, right? And to understand those differences, because I would understand what types of speed figures horses would run in different categories and where they fit. And so I'd say, okay, well, in the fillies, we belong here, but to have the advantage, we need to shift here. And I did. I had a filly that kept entering against the girls and races wouldn't go. And so instead of running her for the 50, I dropped her in the 35 and she beat the boys. Nobody claimed her. And then, we went on with her. But it's understanding where you fit. Now, when you have an exceptional filly of the caliber of Secret Oath, the playing field's now level. To a large extent, when you're going 3-year-old boys against 3-year-old girls, it's level. So I don't think that it's an issue with this filly against boys. I think there's only 2 fillies in the filly category this year that fit with the boys, and that's Nest and Secret Oath. I think Secret Oath, as she showed, is better. But as a physical, Secret Oath is a better fit. She's bigger, she's stronger, and what she has is a devastating turn of foot that would break any horse's heart, colt or filly. So that's kind of my take. We can get into the weeds, but I don't want to ramble on for 30 minutes. I want to give you a chance to give your thoughts.
No, I like I said, I used to be against it, but the more I learned, the more I became open to it, and I'm okay with it, and I see the differences between human athletics and equine athletics, and again, I don't shy away from it like I used to, and I always loved the angle from a betting perspective of a filly that runs against the boys and then comes back and runs against fillies. I always loved that angle, but I'm okay with it. I think if it's the right filly and she earned a spot, and they think that they can compete, and I see it in European racing all the time. I mean, they're competitive at the highest levels over there. They run with the Colts and the Geldings, and it's really no problem. And they do get over the ground and the grass very well, and they're a little lighter and springier sometimes, so it can actually be advantageous at times as well. So I'm all good with it, and I think it's interesting to see. I'm very interested to see how this filly does for Wayne Lucas on Saturday. If she can make that kind of move like she did in the Oaks again, and propel herself right into the race and go on with it, I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think personally, I think she's a filly that obviously now you have the right rider on her. So I think Luis fits her like a glove. And I think he showed it right off in the Oaks. And he said he sat on her in the morning one time in Breezer and said, holy smokes, this is the best horse I've ever sat on. So, I mean, he said best filly, and I think he also said best horse at one stage. I think she's a filly that's starting to come into her own. And I think she has a high enough cruising speed that she can run with the boys early on. I don't think she has to be far back. But she does have a shift of gears that you don't see that often. I mean, she can make up lengths on horses in a matter of seconds. And the acceleration that she has requires a rider who's patient like Luis to push that button at the right time. And that button was pushed at the very wrong time in the Arkansas Derby. And
Right.
this is something, and you would know as a handicapper, each horse has an individual sustained run, right? An individual period of time where they can be all out. Some horses a quarter mile, some horses 3/8, some horses it's 3/16, but it's the rider's job.
Some horses at 70 yards.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the rider's job to know how much you have and when you can push that button. And in the Arkansas Derby, it was pushed way too soon. So she circled the field, looked like she was gone for home, and then all of a sudden you're out of nitro. You know, you're clicking the button hoping that there's more, and there isn't. And the other horse was waiting till he pushed his button and he was gone. So I think a lot of people might look at the Arkansas Derby and say, oh, she can't hang with the boys. No, she can hang with the boys. I don't think there's any problem there. I think it comes down to being in a position, or when you make that run, you catch these horses off guard. And when you catch them off guard, they cannot catch you as you keep kicking clear. And I think, and we could go back to England, right? We talked about England, European fillies. So in England, you don't see it as much as you do in the US, which is why it's not done as often here, is jockeys don't necessarily gang up on fillies in Europe. There's a little bit more running room. They are tightly packed. The courses are a bit more spread out, right? They're wider. There's room to maneuver. They'll shift far outside and they'll kick. So when horses in Europe tend to run, yeah, they might be in the pack, but they tend to spread out, right? We've seen it with Genuine Risk, where Cordero hung her out wide, didn't he? Right? He tried to push her out wide and intimidate her. You've seen it with other fillies in the race where they'll get in a stalking position and riders will get in front of her, riders will get on the outside and they'll lean on her on the fence. Most riders know when there's a filly against the boys, it's the horse to beat. So they use their colts to intimidate them, which is why it doesn't come down to physicality when it's racing fillies versus colts. It comes down to mental toughness. And some of the most mentally tough fillies, probably one of the toughest, and a lot of people don't give her credit because everybody wants to talk about, oh, Swiss Skydiver, and they want to talk about Rachel, and they want to talk about Zenyatta. A lot of people forget there was a great little filly called Rags to Riches who knocked Curlin around in the Belmont. And it was one of the toughest fillies around. So mental toughness comes into play in a huge regard when it's fillies against boys. And I think this filly has mental toughness in spades.
Shuvi.
Yeah.
Shuvi, remember her?
Yeah.
Before your time.
Yeah.
Mental toughness in a filly. One of the best I ever saw. Ruffian, unbelievable. Lot of really great fillies. Genuine Risk.
Yeah.
The one you mentioned that Codex for Wayne. I think Wayne Lucas's first Triple Crown win was with Codex, actually.
Yeah.
And he certainly did. Angel certainly did come out and intimidate Jacinto Vasquez on Genuine Risk, just enough to make a difference, but not enough to get that DQ.
Yeah.
Lady Secret, another one that was capable of beating the boys for Wayne Lucas, winning colors. He beat the boys with.
If there's anyone who knows how to do it, it's Wayne.
He's not in uncharted waters, at all. He's been in this spot before, so it should be interesting. I think it lends an interesting aspect to the Preakness.
Well, and I think it'd be very interesting, and I mentioned it on another little clip I did against fillies against boys. If this filly wins the Preakness, okay, now I know we still have the Haskell, and we still have the Traverse, and we still have the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Right.
If this filly wins the Preakness, she becomes a Horse of the Year contender. in my book, because of what she's accomplished thus far. And so some people are saying, well, why is she doing it? Maybe it could be because of that. I mean, we have seen in the past, right? Azeri was a horse of the year, wasn't she?
Who?
Azeri.
Absolutely.
She was horse of the year. So there are, Zenyatta, wasn't she horse of the year? She was horse of the year a couple times. Yeah. So you'll get some of these fillies, when they step out of their category, instead of just being champion female, they become champion of the entire, racing division. So to me, I think this filly has the opportunity, because I think she gets better as the summer goes on, that this could be a filly that we're talking about come summer, that we're looking at a horse of the year candidate.
If she wins the Preakness, that's something that definitely pops up on the radar, you know what I mean, depending on what she does for the rest of the year. Yeah, no, I would say, the Oaks and the Preakness are a hell of a resume for a 3-year-old filly. So we'll see what happens, man. It's exciting. I'm very curious to see how she's going to run.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of like, oh, boo-hoo, Rich Strike's not in there. But you still have a great group of horses going in here. And some people are saying, oh, it's a soft field. You still have Epicenter. And I still think if you put Secret Oath in, and you can look at the speed figures of what the boys ran, and you can look at the speed figure which she ran. She was right there. So I don't think
it's a soft field at all.
Yeah.
At all. You've got the Oaks winner, albeit a female, but you've got the Oaks winner. You've got the horse that runs second in the Derby. You've got Early Voting, who won the Wood Memorial, sat out the Derby and is now coming in fresh. You've got Smile Happy, who had a not the best trip in the Derby as well. I'm not ready to go say it's a weak field by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's a good competitive race.
And I think it's an exciting race regardless. And I think a lot of people kind of get upset when a horse doesn't go for the Triple Crown, because in our eyes, we need a Triple Crown contender to get us excited and the general public to get excited. Look,
I don't.
We've had 2 Triple Crown winners, and the public is no more excited now than they were before the Triple Crown winners.
Right.
So, for us, let's just enjoy the sport and enjoy it for what
all
it
these
is.
people talking about changing it. You watch. We get another one next year or the year after. They're going to be saying it's too easy. We're going to have to make this Triple Crown thing tougher, like they did in the 70s. But,
Yeah.
All right, so we got the Preakness coming up Saturday. I don't know, when do they draw? Do you know when they draw?
You got me stumped too. Maybe it's.
I don't know. I should know that. I don't. But obviously they draw this week because the race is Saturday. So we've got the Black Eyed Susan, I guess, on Friday. The Oaks counterpart in Maryland. So exciting horse racing weekend coming up, and we'll be back next week with more. We'll have our Preakness thoughts. We'll be able to talk about Secret Oath and how she did. Maybe we'll get Wayne Lucas to join us. We've been trying, just a little difficult to catch up with Wayne. He's busy and popular right now, we're sure. So we'll keep trying, and I guess that's all we got. No?
Yeah, no, I think we'll have plenty more next week, and we'll continue. If anybody ever has questions, wants to know something that we're going to discuss on the show, or wants a question to be answered on the show, either DM myself or DM John. We're happy to take questions, because we do want to help provide you guys with information that you find interesting, and that helps you learn more about our great sport.
Absolutely. You've got questions, we'll have answers. No worries there.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and ciao for now.
Yeah. See ya. Have a good one.
Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING. Get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator exclusively on DRF Bets.
1,000 words fighting back, coming down to the finish. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, this is one stunning picture. Honorary B is full out now, second on the outside. If it's going to go to 1,000 words has done it.
Nobody does it better.